Okay, so we've gotten a little bit of experience with the pen tool, and now we are going to put it to use the same way the pros do. This is an assignment that if you do this well, this could very easily turn into an employment opportunity. So, to give you a little backstory. What we're going to do today is we're going to clip out a pair of shoes for an advertisement that we're going to create in this class. And there's two things we need to do. So I'll talk about that in just a second. But first, I wanted to show you this. For a few years in the early 2000s, I worked as a catalog design artist for DC Shoes. And we created these big print catalogs. We created about 5 of these a year. They were very thick and very full of products. Here's a page from one side of one of them. And you can see that every single one of these shoes came from a studio photo, meaning that they would photograph all of these in all these different angles, and then we would get the images unclipped and uncorrected, and we would have to do all of the repair work in order to prepare them for something like an ad like this, or simply a catalog page like this one. And so trust me when I say that doing this day in and day out for years on end will make you very good at using the pen tool. But you don't have to do it that much to get good at using the pen tool. So what we're going to do today is literally straight out of what a graphic designer might do in a day at a professional company. As we look at these shoes, essentially there is 2 problems we need to fix. Maybe a third or fourth one, but there is definitely 2 problems. One is that they are in a studio environment, which means we have unwanted things in the background that we want to get rid of. And essentially, we're probably going to put these on a new background. Generally, if it's a catalog, it might just be a flat white background. And so for that reason, we need to remove them from this image. Now, here's the second problem, and I don't want you to skip over this. Unfortunately, I see this quite a bit in the past. And I really want you to take this into consideration. If you look at these photos, if you look at this photo, these shoes have a white sole. They have black laces and they have blue leather. If we look at this white here, we can clearly see that it is not 100% white. If we zoom in fact, and to even prove this, we could grab a color picker. We could hit the I key. And we could sample a little bit of this. Let's find a piece right there. Okay? So that is where we are. That is the color of that rubber. That is not white. That is supposed to be white. So the question is, why isn't it white? Well, the reason it's not white is because color bounces. And it bleeds and it reflects. And this is a white piece of acrylic right here with a white background, probably just a piece of paper. And it is absorbing colors from all over this room. This room is full of past advertisements that have been blown up, hanging on the wall. I mean, there was pictures of people with cans of red paint dumped on them. There's all the other shoes that are waiting to get photographed. So there is tons of color in this room that has infected this photograph. So the 2 things that we have to do are to clip out the shoes and to white balance the photograph. Now, if you're not familiar with the term white balance, all it means is that we have to be sure to remove any color from this white area of the shoe, from this white area of the acrylic, and from the black, because black will absorb color as well. It's just not as noticeable. Those are the 2 things we have to do. The third and fourth would be to do any repair, improvement, right? These might have been a sample, and so we see there's a little bit of glue overrun right there. Sometimes that's something we'd want to fix. Also, notice we're getting a little bit of a highlight from the flash of the camera right there. Again, not generally something you want on your product. We're also getting it right there on the toe. So fixing that would also be something we could do. And then there's just the fact that when you clip an image out, especially a pair of shoes, you actually want to trim off the outer layer of pixels. If we zoom in really close here, we can see that there's this rough layer of pixels, and there's also what we call chromatic aberration. That's this thin yellow line that is being created by the light going around the blue and mixing with the light coming back off of the wall in the back, and we end up getting this sort of greenish yellow line along with just this rough edge of pixels. So when we clip these out, we're not just simply removing them from an unwanted background. We're definitely doing that, but we're also improving the image. We're improving the product. We're getting rid of all these little pills and shags that are sticking off right there. So really, we're doing 5 things. And if you think about it, these 5 things are all necessary. Imagine how difficult the process it is to design a pair of shoes, find a factory in China to get samples made. They send the samples back. You make changes. They update them. You finally get the final shoe in your hands, and you take a picture of it so that you can make an advertisement. Is there any reason why you wouldn't spend an extra hour or 2 to clip them out, improve them, white balance them, fix the glue marks? I mean, it's what you would do. And I said an hour or 2, but the reality is it doesn't take anywhere near that long. In my days at DC, I could get this whole thing done in about 15 minutes, maybe less. So let's go ahead and hop in, and I'm going to show you the process right now of clipping out a pair of shoes, white balancing them, and preserving these reflections in the acrylic and these shadows so that when we put these into an advertisement, they look more realistic because you'll be able to see these reflections. So the first thing we're going to do, and again, make sure that you do every step in this process. Let's go ahead and grab our pen tool. Now what I generally do is I'll start somewhere over here and just kind of work my way around. But when it gets down to the reflections and the shadows, I'm going to go real wide, and you'll see why that's not a problem. So let's come ahead and bring our pen tool over here. I have hit Command plus to zoom in. I'll be using the space bar to help me move around the image. That gives you the hand tool temporarily. As soon as I let go, I'm back to the pen tool. Okay? All right, so I like to start usually right about there. And I start by just clicking and adding a point. And sometimes I'll zoom in even closer. The closer you zoom in, the easier this is, and the better job you'll do. So we start off with a straight line, so I'm going to go ahead and just click a straight line. And at this point, what I tend to do is I just tend to click and hold the mouse down and drag a little bit in the direction that I'm going. So if I click right here and I drag a little bit and then I click right here. Now again, I just clicked once there. I'm going to put the mouse up here. Basically, think of this as a small circle. Let's zoom in a little bit here. So we have this round edge right here. So what I do is I kind of go from, let's say this is a clock and that's 6 o'clock. I'm going to go up to 3 o'clock. I'm going to click and then I'm going to drag forward. And you see how it gives me that nice rounded edge right there. Could have done the same thing right here. So let's go ahead and do that as well. Now that we're zoomed in a little closer, I can see better. So imagine this point now is at 3 o'clock and this one is 12 o'clock. I'm going to click and I'm going to drag a little bit. Gives me a little bit of curvature. I'm going to go up and then I'm going to go back to sort of 3 o'clock and click and drag. Now is that perfect? Not necessarily. Again, it's going to be pretty small by the time it is all shrunk down. So generally what we want to do is get our path created and then come back and make any changes we need to. And remember, we're going to try to trim off this outer pixel. So if you see me going a little bit inside, don't worry about it. So again, I click and I drag in the direction that I'm going. I'm going up, so I'm going to click and drag up. And just sort of click and drag. And that's kind of what I do. And that way, as I go around subtle curves like this, and big subtle curves, you don't have to click nearly as many points. You can start to space them out as long as you understand how to continue these curves. So we see this curve right here. So if my last point was right there, if I come to right about here and click and drag in the direction of the shape, you can see that it gives me this nice curve. And now I have this sort of outer bulge. I'll go up here, click and drag, and notice how it's bending in to fill in that area. So really, this isn't nearly as difficult as you think. Generally, if you just follow this principle, click and drag in the direction of the shape. We get up here, and again, I can start to space these out. Big arcs like this are easy with the pen tool because I can click kind of right in the middle of it and drag in the direction of the shape. And then I can click again, and now I've got a little dip in here. So I click at the bottom of it and drag up. Then I kind of go to the high point, click and drag down, and you can see how we're just staying right inside that line. And again, I'm going to click and just drag in the direction of the outline that I'm trying to create. And notice how well that works. Now when I get to kind of a valley like this, I can just click and let it go. And then I come up here and again, click and drag, click and drag. Just try to follow that shape by both clicking and dragging the mouse. When you get to a spot like this, just click, no need to drag. I hit the space bar now to give me the hand tool. And so here's a great big one. Nice, big, even arc. There's no need to make a million points on this. I can jump to right about here, click, and just, again, see how I'm kind of pulling that in the direction of the shape, and look at how it makes it fit perfectly. So space bar to move, and then click and drag, stop, click and drag. And I think you start to get the idea that, hey, clipping shoes out isn't that hard at all. You know what's hard clipping out is models with big curly hair and trying to get all those curls out. That was hard. Clipping shoes, once you kind of get in the groove, is pretty easy. Again, a lot of if there are straight lines, there's times where you just click 2 points. Now that I look at that, I think there is a little bend in that line, so we'll go back and fix it. But just click and drag as though you're tracing. Now, here's a spot. This is one of the reasons why automated selection methods fail, because you can see I missed it myself. You see the shoe right here is a white, and it is sort of just disappearing into the background. So we need to sort of make a choice of where we're going to kind of try to preserve this shoe. And it looks to me like we're going to go to right about there, and then I'm thinking right about there looks like where we start to see that rubber. And when you want big sweeping curves like this right here, less points is better. So I'm going to go up here. Now, if I went right to this edge here, notice how there's a little drop off. If I went right to this edge and then clicked down, notice I can't really pull on the handle to match that arc. And if I do, kind of click and pull to get it to match, well, now I can't just drop it down, because you see how I get that bulge right there? I mean, I could go back and get the direct select tool, grab that handle and pull it in. But when you got to do, 100 pairs of these in an hour or two, that's a little time consuming. So what I tend to do in that situation is I won't go right to the edge. I'll go to right about here, click, pull, and then I can kind of make a dead stop there and then continue on down here. Just a little pro tip for you. And then we just continue on, clicking and dragging in the direction that we are trying to trace. And you'll notice that very few of these do the handles even go outside of the shoes. And at the same time, we're trimming off that outer layer of sort of rough leather. Definitely be a few option times where you can just click points and not have to do anything, but all I'm really doing is clicking and dragging a little bit for every one of these lines. And you'll find that with this process, clipping is no big deal. You're going to get faster and faster, and you'll find yourself in situations where you're like, should I use the object select tool knowing it's going to fail and a lot of little tiny things that I'll have to go back and fix, or should I just suck it up and do it this way myself, knowing that I'm going to have full control, and when it's all said and done, we're going to have that. And at any point I can grab the direct select tool, go in and modify these, move them around, fix up things I might have missed or anything like that. Okay, so we've got the tops of the shoes selected. Now I want to make sure to preserve this reflection and this shadow right over here. So all I'm going to do, and I'm not worried about tracing them, I'm just sort of creating this wide shadow catcher. And there we go. So right there we have created a path around our shoes. All right, so we have our image of our shoes and we have a path. If we go to the Layers tab and we click on Paths, you will see that. Now, what we want to do is we want to convert this into a selection. Right now it is a path, but we want to change these blue lines into marching ants. We can do that by either right-clicking and choosing Make Selection, or we can go to Path, click on the work path, come down to the bottom and choose Load Selection from Path. Either one is going to convert these into marching ants. And as I said before, I can tell already I have gotten an inverse selection. You can see I have marching ants around the outside of my frame. If you see the same thing, hit Shift Command I to basically make sure it selects what's inside the marching ants, not what's outside the marching ants. If you're not seeing a marching ants around the outside of your frame, don't worry about it. It seems like it's something specific to my computer. But either way, now we have a selection of these shoes. And at this point, what I like to do is hit Command J. That's going to be Control J on a PC. And if we turn off the background, we can see that we are left with a pair of clipped out shoes. Okay, so we got through the clipping part. We created the shoes on their own layer. That's exactly what we want. And now we need to white balance them. So the process for white balancing products is somewhat unusual. It's not like anything else we do in Photoshop. The way that we are going to white balance these is by taking advantage of the different color modes available in Photoshop. Now, when I say color modes, what I mean is if we go up to Image, Mode, you will see that there is RGB mode, CMYK mode, but you'll also see one called Grayscale mode. And what we're going to do is we're going to save a version of these as black and white. And then we're going to mix that version with the color ones. We'll keep the rubber and the black areas from the black and white version, and we'll use the color areas from the color version. Let me show you what I mean. So what I'm going to do now is this, and follow these steps carefully. They're simple and they're really powerful. So if I hit Command A or Control A on a PC, you can see now that it has selected the outside of my frame, which means it's selected everything. Command A is Select All. I'm then going to hit Command C to copy. Obviously that's Control C on a PC. So I've selected this and I've copied it. Now check this out. If I go up to File, New, the first option I'm going to see says Clipboard. 3835 by 22064. Essentially what it's doing is it sees that I've copied something and it's giving me a document that exactly matches the size of the selection I just made. So if I click Create, this is the size of what I just selected. Now it might have ignored some of this empty space because it looks like this is a little bit shorter, but that's okay. All right, now one thing that I do not want is I do not want these shoes on a solid background, but we'll get to that in a second. So I've come over here, I've selected these, I've hit Command C to copy. I've gone to File, New Document. I used the clipboard option. Now all I need to do is click in here and hit Command V. And I just pasted those shoes that I copied. And you can see that it clipped off a little bit of the top, but that's no big deal. Okay, so again, once you're done clipping your shoes, copy them onto a new layer by hitting Command J, and then Command A to select all, Command C to copy, go File, New, pick the first option, the one that says Clipboard, just like I did here, and then hit Command V to paste the shoes into the new document. All right, so we have this one and we have this one. Now here's what we're going to do. In this document, we're going to, this is the copied one, we're going to turn off the background because we don't need it. We're going to go up to where it says Image, Mode, and we're going to change these to grayscale. And it's going to say, changing modes can affect the appearance of layers. Should you merge the layers before you change the mode? And the answer is absolutely not. Okay, we don't want to fill in the background with solid white. So we'll choose Don't Merge. And then it says, what about the color information? Discard. Okay, so now we can see what's happened here. It's taken our shoes and it's basically completely desaturated them. There is no color in this image. Our purple is now gray. Our black is now pure black. Our white is now pure white. The only thing that's in there other than white is some gray. But there is no yellow. There's no green. There's no random reflected colors bouncing off the walls affecting our nice white rubber on our shoes or our solid black background sole. Okay, so now we need to blend this image back into this one. And this can be a little bit tricky. So what we're going to do is this. Again, make sure that the background is turned off. In fact, you could even double click on it to unlock it and then delete it, because we want to make sure that we have onion skin behind our shoes here. All right, so we copied them into this document. Now we're going to copy them out of this document. So we'll hit Command A to select all, Control A on a PC. We'll hit Command C to copy, Control C on a PC. And then we will go back to our original image and we'll hit Command V to paste them in. Control C, Control V on a PC. Now notice that it didn't get them right on top of themselves. So what we want to do at this point is, in order to make sure they are perfectly aligned, I'm going to select my black and white layer and I'm going to drop its opacity down to 50%. And at this point, I'm going to hit the V key for the move tool and just kind of use Shift and the arrow keys. So I can see that we're a little bit high above, so I'll hold Shift, hit the down arrow a few times till the top looks pretty even. I'm kind of looking right there basically, and you can see that I'm still about a pixel high. So I'll use the arrow key, and there we go. Now you can see that blue line is kind of even. Then I'll hold down Shift and I'll use the right arrow key. And when I get close, I kind of just switch it down to I let go of Shift and I just use the arrows. And you'll notice, because you'll see it come in and out of focus. If you're off, you'll see it looks blurry. If you're right on, you'll see it look tack sharp. And if you go too far, it'll get blurry again. Okay, so at this point, I can now turn this back up to 100%. And simply enough, if we just look at these two layers, we have black and white on top of color. And click the on and off button a few times. If it feels like they're moving each time you turn it on and off, then they're not lined up perfectly. So again, use the arrow keys because those will move it a pixel at a time. And okay, so at this point we have two images, and we want to keep the white and the black from the top image, but we want to let the color of the blue leather and the yellow logo show through from the bottom image. We're going to do that by simply erasing anything that is over a colored area. Okay, let me say that one more time just so it makes sense. All we're going to do is erase the parts that should be blue. Like that part, this part, and of course that there's some yellow on purpose in that logo on the heel. So everything else we're going to leave black and white. So this is what we do. We're going to select the black and white layer. We're going to go grab the eraser tool, and we're going to erase. But the one thing about the eraser tool that I don't like is that it's destructive, right? If I erase too far and end up revealing some of that nasty green, other than hitting Command Z, I can't bring back what I've erased. So before we get into this, let's just think, what if there was a way that we could erase something but still have the option to paint it back in if we mess up? Well, what we just described there is called a mask. Okay, so rather than using the eraser tool, what we're going to do is we're going to add a mask. And with a mask, using a black brush, we'll erase pixels, and using a white brush, we'll paint those pixels back in. So check this out. If we come down to the bottom of our layers panel with our black and white layer selected, and I click this icon that looks like a white rectangle with a black hole in it. If you just hover over it, you'll see it says Layer Mask. And a layer mask allows you to hide parts of your image and then bring them back at any time. So let's go ahead and click on that. All right, so we get this right here. This is the layer mask, and by default, it doesn't do anything. It just sits there. But when it comes time to erase from this image, I want to make sure that I click on that first. So that if I click on here, on the shoes, and I come out here with a black brush, it's just going to draw black. But if I click on the mask, and I come out here with a black brush, it becomes an eraser. See how that works? And then, if I switch it to a white brush, which I can do by just hitting the X key, notice how, look over here, if I click X, it toggles between black and white. And it does that specifically for masking. If I switch the foreground color to white and I now color, notice that it paints back in those pixels. So masking, again, no big deal, not complicated. It's just a simple way to erase something non-destructively. Okay? So how do we do this? Well, we click on our mask. We're going to go up to our brush settings. And right now the hardness is set to about 26. Yours might be different. I'm going to set mine to 100. And the reason is because I have these hard lines around the rubber that I want to get nice and sharp. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to zoom in. I am going to hit the B key for my brush. Again, if you didn't do that already, hit the B key. Set your hardness to 100%. I'm going to use the bracket keys. You have to click off. If you click on your brush settings, it won't let you use your shortcuts, so just click off up there. I'm going to use the bracket keys now to get kind of a small brush. And what I'm going to do, the way I like to do this, is I'm going to kind of just do a bunch of straight lines, meaning that, because I'm trying to match that angle perfectly with my mouse is a guaranteed recipe for carpal tunnel. So I'm going to hold Shift and I'm going to click. Now again, click on the mask, Make sure that your color is set to black, because black erases and white replaces. I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to click right here. You can see that as long as I hold down Shift, and I just kind of look at the bottom of my brush, it's drawing straight lines. Meaning that it's just connecting each one of these points that I click. There might be spots where I might need to dip in a little bit further. You can see it kind of missed a little bit right in there. Not a big deal. And so again, maybe my brush is a little too big. Let's shrink it down a little bit. And what I tend to do is I tend to do my outline first, meaning that I just go through and kind of protect all of the black and white stuff that I don't want to remove. See right there, I got a little too far. Got a little green in there, so I'm going to hit X, and I'm just going to paint over that green. See how that goes away. Again, masking is awesome. And then I hit X again to get back to black, and then I'm going to come here and kind of get the toe. And once I kind of get some of that, then I just hold down Shift, and kind of Shift connects all your points together. So if you have straight lines, it's a heck of a lot easier than trying to move your mouse in a perfect curve. Now at this point, I want to essentially just ignore the laces, ignore the tongue. All I really want is these little spots there, there. And sometimes it doesn't hurt to just click the eyeball on and off to see where the color is. Feels like it's moving just a little bit, but I'm going to worry about that later. Okay, so we got that maybe in there, and then up here we've got this. Now, do I need to worry about these black spots in between these lines? Not really. Again, this isn't going to be that big that anybody will be able to tell. Plus the black doesn't get nearly as affected as the white does. So I can be a little bit looser up here. And then we'll come back down to the toe. And you know, some of this I'll do by hand. If I go a little bit into the black, it's not a big deal. Like I said, black doesn't show the color infection nearly as bad as white does. And I just tend to kind of go around and outline everything, and then I can switch to a bigger brush and more quickly just finish the job. So again, I'm using a black brush and a mask for the simple reason that it lets me work non-destructively. If I mess up and accidentally get into the white, and maybe I don't notice it until later, I can always just switch to a white brush and remove or replace the pixels that I removed. So there we go. We've outlined everything. That allows me to then increase my brush size. I'm using the right bracket key right underneath the plus and the delete key. And there we go. Over here, shrink our tool down just a little bit. And then zoom out. Again, shrink it, come in a little bit, and then shrink that tool. There we go. And now all we have to do is get that yellow back in the logo here. And so again, we just zoom in by hitting Command plus, shrink our brush size down. I don't have to worry about the onion skin area, so I can kind of be a little loose on these edges up here. And then down here, I'm just going to hold down the Shift key and kind of click in straight lines. Because again, trying to drag my mouse perfectly around these edges would not be fun. Now, I went a little bit over right there. The reality is, when you shrink these down, no one would ever see that. But for the sake of showing you how to do it the right way, I'll fix it. Okay, so now I got to shrink my brush down just a little bit, get this little corner in here, and then I can raise it back up. Okay, there we go. And then again, you can just make that brush a little bigger. Again, I'm using a black brush because black erases And white is what I will use to repaint in anything if I go too far. All right. Okay, yeah, there was a little tiny spot where I went over just a hair. Let's see, maybe right there. We could fix that. I'll hit the X key. That switches me back to white. I can then come in there and just erase that little green line that went over right there. That was definitely a mistake. We'll fix that, and there we go. Okay, so we've done the two most important things. We've white balanced the shoe. Now again, if you don't think this makes a difference, that's what it looked like before. This is what it looks like now. All right, now let's go ahead and just quickly fix, well, first off, let's make sure we didn't screw anything up. As I look over here, I see, oh, there's a spot I missed. So we'll come back over here. We'll hit X to get the black brush, and there we go. Okay, so at this point, from now on, I want these shoes to live together. I don't think I'll ever need to separate them. So this is an opportunity where I might merge these two layers together. And to do that, I'm going to hold down Shift and click here so that both are selected. If you need to click the top one, click that one too. Then I'm going to right click and choose Merge Layers. And notice that's going to disable my mask, but that's okay because now I am left with a perfectly nice looking pair of white balanced shoes, which is exactly what we wanted. Last thing we could do here is we could use the stamp tool to fix some of these glue overruns. You know, they basically squeeze the shoe together, a little bit of glue squirts out and it ends up drying and doesn't look all that great. So the stamp tool is a great tool. It allows you to select pixels from another area and paint them somewhere else. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to shrink my brush down. I'm going to hit the S key. That gives me the stamp tool. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to select a group of pixels. And then I'm going to come down below them and just kind of paint over this line. And you'll see that it's going to take the group of pixels I selected and use them to fill this in. First thing you need to do with the stamp tool is make a selection. So what I tend to do, I don't want to pick something super far away because the color might be different. I want something relatively close, like maybe you're like right above it. So I'm going to come right over here. I'm going to put my mouse on the edge of the shoe, and then I'm going to just raise it up its own height. Now I'm going to hold down the Option key. You notice when I hit Option, I get a bullseye, which is basically saying, hey, this is the area you're selecting. So if I click Option, click, I have now loaded my mouse with the pixels in that circle. If I drag it down over the white, you can see. You can also see that I've got a soft brush, and I don't really want a soft brush for this because we do have a hard edge right there. So I'm going to go up to my brush settings. I'm going to go to where it says hardness. I'm not going to set it to 100 because I do want the top side to blend with the leather, so I'll set it to like 90, and that should be good enough. All right, so I clicked here, and all I'm going to do now is move the mouse down to the line, click, and as soon as I click and hold down the mouse, you'll notice there's a plus sign just to the right, upper right of the arrow. That's telling me where it's pulling the pixels from that it's filling in the brush with. As I move my mouse, you can see it's moving its selection point. So you can see exactly what it's filling in the brush with. And as we go, you can see it's just moving that leather down over that black glue, and with just a little bit of that, and maybe we'll get these two little bright pixels. Here we go. All right, looks good. Now normally I would also go back and grab a couple other spots as well, just little things that stick out like that right there. So again, I'll put the mouse right next to it, hold Option. Again, that's going to be Alt on a PC. Click once, and then just fill it in with those pixels. Okay. Any other spots like that? I think I saw, well, there's that little glue spot right there. Again, option over here. There we go. And you can kind of drag the mouse around and click too, and it's showing you what it's filling that in with. There's a weird little hair right there, so I'll go kind of right above. Now this, since this is kind of on a line, I want to make sure that I'm going to try to get right in the center of that black line. Click, and then kind of follow it down. Click, and then just drag to the right a little bit. And that gets rid of that. Everything else looks pretty good. It's a good idea to zoom out. Take one last look. We could maybe get that little white spot right there. Again, option, click, and boom, easy fix. All right, so our shoes are white balanced and they are done and they are ready to be added into our advertisement. So we will be highlighting these shoes in the lower right-hand corner of our ad. One thing that I want to point out before we move forward is that because we have white balanced these, and the black is pure black, and the white is pure white, if we were to add a hue saturation filter to this image, the only thing it would affect would be the color areas. One thing that I want you guys to do is to change the color of the shoes to match the color palette of your advertisement. So if I go down to adjustment layers and I go to hue saturation, you see now I've got a hue saturation adjustment layer, and if I start to change that color, you can see it's only affecting the shoes. So what I want you guys to do is find something in the image that you use for your advertisement and color the shoes to match the palette. That'll make more sense in the next tutorial, but I just wanted to show you one of the benefits of white balancing is the fact that you can do some pretty significant color shifts and it doesn't affect the black areas or the white at all. Cool, I'm gonna leave mine like that, and I am going to save this as a PNG file. Now the reason we want to use a PNG instead of a JPEG is because a PNG file will retain opacity. If we saved this as a JPEG and then tried to drag it into our advertisement, the JPEG file would fill the background with solid white, which is, again, probably what we're going to end up doing anyways, but you'll see that there's a reason why we don't want to do that right away. And so we're going to go File, Export, Export As, and where it says Format, we're going to make sure it says PNG. I'm going to leave the size at full size because I don't want to shrink this down yet. And I'm going to click Export. Now I'll save these to my pen tools assignments, and I'll call this Shoes, Clip, and White Balanced. And click Save. All right. And that's going to do it for this one. We'll get into building the advertisement out in the next tutorial.